If it's Sunday night, it's Wrestling Night in America here on pwtorch on the Daily Cast or here on YouTube if you're watching us here on YouTube. I'm not Greg Parks. I'm Nate Lindberg filling in for Greg Parks tonight. And here with me to talk some G1 and TNA Slammiversary is Chris Maitland. Great. Wow, Chris, thanks for joining me here tonight, man.
Thank you for having me, Nate. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Greg's out doing some family things tonight. He'll be back next week. So you're stuck with me this time tonight, guys. You're stuck with me. I hope that's okay. So let's kind of go on. We had the second night of the G1 tournament here taking place, and so let's kind of just run down the card here real quick, and then kind of get into it from there. If you do want to be part of the show, you can certainly email us. I do not have Greg's inbox. I can't get there. So if you want to send us an email, send it to my email address for my show, pwtorchnxt@gmail.com, and we'll get a hold of, we'll get some of those. You can also join the show here if you'd like to and come up on screen with us and talk with us if you'd like. I'm going to post it in the chat right now here on YouTube, and you guys can click on that link and join us if you'd like. So let's go ahead and so we saw, like I said, second night of the G1, saw Sonata defeating Callum Newman. And I'm probably going to butcher a lot of these names, guys. As some of you may know, I'm not the biggest. I don't really have the time in my life to keep up with all of the wrestling in the world. So Sonata versus Callum Newman, Hanare versus Oleg Boltlin, Gabe Kidd versus Grado Khan, Ren Narita versus El Phantasmo, Evil versus Jake Lee, Yuya Umara defeats Hiroki Goto, Shoto Umino defeats Shingo Takagi. Thank you. Zack Sabre Jr. defeats. Awesome. What he said. Zack Sabre Jr. defeats Naito, and Yota Tsuchi defeats David Finlay in a B block there. So that's kind of a bit of a rundown here. So just, Chris, I guess, overall thoughts of the show and anything that really kind of stood out to you.
Yeah, I think the one thing about the G1, not just this show in particular, but this year, is that this is a tournament in flux. They didn't have a lot of their standard wrestlers who've been in Tomohiro Ishii, Yano, Hiroshi Tanahashi, who've been in for several years. And Tanahashi's been in going back to I think 2001, and they've lost those folks. So they have a lot of new wrestlers coming in, and I think one of the issues that you have is that when you have so many people in, it's a bit difficult to get everyone to shine because you have so many wrestlers who are spotlighted. But this G1 is very special. I think we look back in the future because it's kind of the opportunity for a lot of single wrestlers to establish themselves who may not have gotten that opportunity to do so. Obviously, in the main event, a lot of people were talking about Zack Sabre Jr. defeating Tetsuya Naito. Zack Sabre Jr. came out before and said that he wanted to win the tournament because he'd never done it. He'd been in Japan long enough. He'd never wrestled for the IWGP title at the Tokyo Dome. And they even had a picture of him posing with the belt. At times, beating the current champion. Naito was a current IWGP champion, for those who don't know. It's a really good opportunity for someone who beats them to have a singles match down the line with them. But it's a very long tournament. I think the one thing that I've learned from watching G1 is don't get too wrapped up in a day or two results. There were some fantastic matches on the show. There's an in-depth report from Kelly Wells on the Torch website, but one of the matches that I was looking forward to, based on the fact that I'm a fan of both these wrestlers, was Hiroki Goto versus Yuya Uemura. Uemura was actually in, I guess it was Impact at the time. He was in Impact Wrestling, kind of on excursion. And Goto is one of my favorite wrestlers for quite a while. G1 winner in 2000. and they had kind of a generational match of Umiura and the new stars getting featured, going up against Goto, who's a legacy star who won in 2008 and kind of been more of a tag team wrestler. And they had that really good story where Umiura ended up winning at the end. So I'm kind of annoyed that Goto is kind of in a gatekeeper portion of his career in the G1. But I think Umiura is someone who had a lot of personality when he wrestled in America and is someone that could get a real good benefit of a push here. I do think that Tsuji or Shota Umino may be ahead of him in the pecking order, but if I were to pick someone to be a dark horse, it would be him. And as well, the main event, as I mentioned before, was a fantastic match between Zack Sabre Jr. and Naito. Again, giving Zack Sabre Jr. fans hope. But it's a long tournament. For those of you who may be watching the G1 for the first time, don't get too caught up in day-to-day results. Everyone has to lose. No one goes undefeated. So people get really upset when their favorite wrestler loses the first match. And typically New Japan, at least under Geto's leadership, booking leadership, have had some of the favorites lose early and make comebacks. Very famously, Kenny Omega in his first G1 lost the opener to Yoshihashi. I had to mention Yoshihashi. He's on the tournament. He's one of my favorites too. And Omega ended up winning the 2016, but he lost his opening match. So it's a long tournament. The finals are until mid-August. There's a lot can happen, but so far so good. But I think a lot of it has to be evaluated at the end to see how well they've established some of those new stars.
No, excellent. Cool. Let's I'm gonna just check. Okay, I did have an email, but it's not about the G1, so that's fine. Steve Repsher coming in with a question that I want to know the answer to. Does your daughter still like Joe Hendry's entrance music?
Shout out Steve. Justin and I met him at Final Battle 2021. So shout out to him. And the answer is yes.
Nice.
She so a quick story with Joe Hendry. So Justin and I used to host a show called Honor Speak, a Ring of Honor show. When Ring of Honor changed ownership at the time, they announced they may not be doing any of the shows. We decided we were going to go to Final Battle, even though I was not traveling so much with a wife who was a few months away from having birth to our second child. But anyway, I went to Final Battle. I loved Joe Hendry's theme song. It's a very addictive, as most of you have learned. And I would sing it to my oldest daughter while giving her a bath. And he loved it so much. But with kids, they forget. But then I played it for her a couple of days ago, and then she remembered, and she started swaying in the car, waving her hands from side to side. So, long story short, yes, Steve, she still believes in Joe Hendry. Say
his name, and he appears. I've been getting Kelly with that as much as I can on PWT Talks NXT. But speaking of Kelly mentioned to me that you guys have done a show on the G1.
I have not. I'm sure there's several shows at the Torch, so I'm sure someone has done one or someone will do one, but I have not done one.
Oh, okay. Maybe I misunderstood what Kelly wrote, so I'm just scratch that. That sounds good to me. Cool. So it's kind of we'll kind of get into Slammiversary here. Running down the card, we saw Tasha Steelz defeating Fabi Apache, Gazelle Shaw, and Zaya Brookside. Kushida defeating Rich Swann. We saw Knockouts Tag Team Championship match for Masha Slamovich and Alicia Edwards defeating Jody Threat and Danny Luna to retain the titles. Eric Young defeated Alexander Hammerstone, and that was all, I believe, in the pre-show of the night. In the show proper, we saw Matt Hardy defeating Dango. We saw a TNA World Tag Team Championship match. Ace Austin and Chris Bay defeating Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards to win the titles. We saw Mike Santana defeating Jake Something. The Rascals defeated No Quarter Catch Crew from NXT. So we saw an actual NXT match here on Slammiversary. TNA Digital Media Championship and International Heavyweight Wrestling Championship, PCO, defeated AJ Francis in a Montreal street fight to win both titles. We had a Knockouts Championship. Jordan Grace defeating Ash by Elegance, the former Dana Brooke, to retain her title. X Division Championship, Mike Bailey defeated Mustafa Ali to keep his title. And TNA World Championship, Nick Nemeth defeated Moose, Josh Alexander, Frankie Kazarian, Steve Macklin, and the man himself, Joe Hendry, to win the title. So, just I guess kind of your overall thoughts on on Slammiversary. I don't know if it want to necessarily go through match by match here or anything, but what did you necessarily think of the show?
So overall, I enjoyed the show. I watched a little bit of a delay because I am a soccer fan. I was watching my New York Red Bulls defeat FC Cincinnati. Apologize to any FC Cincinnati fans out there. But it was a really enjoyable show. I actually double-checked this morning. I can't recall a show, and they had a couple on the pre-show where the baby faces won every single match. So every champion, you had a baby face win. And then even you had grudges whether it be NXT versus the No Quarter Catch Crew, Matt Hardy versus JDC, the babyface ended up winning. You also had a really good match between Mike Santana and Jake Something, though they're both babyfaces. So it's interesting from that standpoint. I thought it was a really good show. The only thing that I didn't like was the fact, and nothing against him personally, but the show took place in Montreal, and during the semi-main event between Mustafa Ali, who was the X Division champion, against Mike Bailey, they brought out Earl Hebner to screw him over in Montreal, which he ended up doing. He ended up calling the match fair for Bailey when Bailey won. But I kind of get out of these. I don't know why they're doing these tropes from 25 years ago, more than that now. I think it's 27 years ago almost. That has nothing to do with TNA or Impact. Impact didn't exist. And those of you watching on YouTube can see that I have a gray beard. When the Montreal screw job happened, I was in high school. So it was a long time ago, and need to move on from that. But I know some fans in the crowd liked it. Again, they had about 4,000 people there, which is a good crowd for TNA. They have a lot of momentum, hopefully, especially with the NXT collaboration or working with them. And the main event, I thought that Joe Hendry was going to win the title just because of all the momentum he had. He even pinned Moose. That was the second pin, and a lot of the crowd thought, "Oh, he's definitely going to win now." But in a way, he was used more as a vehicle for a Josh Alexander heel turn. Josh Alexander ended up kicking him low, and then pinning him eventually. So Joe Hendry didn't win, but there may be a feud with him and Josh Alexander, which can be interesting. But overall, I thought it was a really good show. And one of the things that we talk about on our show, Wrestling Coast to Coast, Justin McClelland and I, is the fact that we want like baby faces and heels to be clear, and all the baby faces won. So everyone left Montreal happy last night.
So do you keep up with NXT? Being an NXT guy myself.
I do a little bit. I mean, I sometimes talk to Bruce Hazelwood, Doc Bruce. He keeps me informed. And actually, to be honest, I think one of the things that's helped NXT is, as someone who watches a lot of TNA, when I saw that TNA people were crossing over, it kind of made me follow it even more.
Cool, because that was actually going to be my question. Like, I don't know if you've tuned into, if you've tuned into NXT recently, but we've seen a lot of Joe Hendry on NXT TV, and I'm curious to find out, what your impression of Joe Hendry on NXT is, and if you feel like they're using him correctly. That's a question we got this past Tuesday on PWT Talks NXT. I like the way that they're personally using Joe Hendry, and as well as the rest of the TNA stars, for that matter, the Rascals and everything. But just kind of wondering if you had any thought on that.
Yeah, I thought they're using him pretty well. I think the funny thing about Joe Hendry, when he first returned to TNA about a year and a half ago, he was like a comedy figure, and there wasn't this seriousness to him that you kind of have now, where now he's like, he jokes around, but it looks like he can, be a champion contender. I think the biggest tell of how much they like Joe Hendry or are using his star power is when they put him in the main event as Trick Williams's partner. I think it was a special partner or a secret partner against Sean Spears and Ethan Page. Like, that is not and he actually got the pin. I thought that's not a role that you just give anyone to. Putting him there in that position meant they at least want to keep him in a prominent role. And so I think it's good for him going forward. I did think maybe that's the reason why he didn't win the TNA title, is because, you know, he might lose there he might have to lose there a few times in NXT, and maybe they don't want their champion doing that. But for Joe Hendry's name recognition and for his ability to get himself out there, I think it's going really well. And I think WWE has done well by him and the other TNA wrestlers.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, you know, going, you know, from Jordan Grace coming in a few, what feels like a couple months ago at this point, you know, to take on Roxanne Perez for the NXT title, all the way to the Rascals. I think I think it's been a fun crossover, and it's something that like I never would have thought I've seen. This the Triple H era in WWE is just it. It almost feels like we're going back to the old moniker. Anything can happen in the WWE, because I mean, this one particular crossover between TNA and NXT in particular, but between WWE and TNA. I mean, what could that potentially lead to down the line? You know, I mean, never say never with the possible, you know, WWE and AEW collaboration. I think that's pretty low odds, but you know, never say never. There could, you know, potentially be some more collaboration with New Japan. I know they've done a couple things. Or actually, wasn't New Japan. They sent Shinsuke to
Noah and AJ
Noah.
Styles.
Okay,
Noah.
yeah, that's right. You know, so I think this is a good thing for wrestling overall. If do you have any thoughts on maybe like you know, another promotion or additional you know, additional collaborations that could potentially take place down the line? Like, we're talking fantasy booking, I guess, at this point.
Oh, fantasy just with other promotions or other TNA wrestlers with NXT?
Either or, really. Just I don't know. I just thought it'd be something fun to bring up.
I think they're working with the new women's promotion called Marigold, which only had one show, but they sent Io Sky over there. I think that could be interesting. I know Julia is, I think she is wrestling for them a couple times, and I think she's coming to NXT later in the year. I've heard, or there's been rumblings about WWE wanting to have a bigger presence in Mexico. So working with one of the Mexican companies, obviously most likely to be AAA, since CML is in the New Japan AEW camp. But I would like to see some AAA or any Mexican promotion involved with WWE. With, I think the two people I want to see cross paths, because I really enjoyed them as a tag team, though I don't know their situation, is Josh Alexander and Ethan Page with the North in TNA or Impact. It's Impact at the time. They keep changing the name. I like calling it Impact. Know, right? When you say you're watching TNA, people look at you kind of funny. So I prefer to call it
a little bit.
But yeah, I'm going to my wife. What are you watching tonight? I'm watching TNA. I was like, oh, really? Are you?
Are you now?
But seriously, they were a great tag team before Ethan Page left to go to AEW at the time. So there could be quite a good crossover there. There's also this sort of, there are a lot of people in the main roster who had really good spells in TNA, whether it be AJ Styles or Drew McIntyre or Bobby Lashley, who I saw today may not be with WWE much longer, but those who have really good legacies in TNA, they could very easily come back. Or then currently LA Knight, formerly Eli Drake, another person that comes to mind. So there are a lot of different examples.
Thought about that one.
Yeah, as well as even Chelsea Green as well. I mean, there are a lot of people who've crossed over there. So I think one of the things that wrestling fans have gotten too caught up in is like people's contracts. This person's here for 4 years. This person's here for 2 years. It's like, why don't the companies just put together a good show and not worry about who's going to be there forever? So I like the working together. You're not worried about how do I keep someone strong for 18 months. It's like they're here for a month. We can book them a certain way, and then after that, they go on their merry way. And that's the kind of the benefit of these kind of collaborations.
No, absolutely. Steve, I like your idea. Ron Killings, because I just would love to see R-Truth show up at a TNA show thinking he's on SmackDown or something like that.
Yeah,
Just be absolutely hilarious.
yeah.
Brock Benningfield says that he'd like to see more Lucha in WWE. We've got, let's see, we've got, how would we book a Liv and Rhea match? So I'm assuming he's talking about the actual match coming up for SummerSlam. Um, any thoughts on, how you would, I mean, I've got a couple thoughts on how I would, I guess, book a finish or anything, but I'm not the greatest when it comes to fantasy booking a match. Any thoughts on how you would do that?
I think it really depends on what direction you're going. If Rhea is going to be the champion, I think Rhea should beat her pretty definitively.
Yeah.
If Liv is going to be the champion, I think Dom turns on Rhea, and leads to Liv winning. Those would be my two options, depending on who you wanted to win.
That's basically exactly where I'm at. Like, I feel like this is Rhea's time to shine. She's coming back from injury. We've had this whole story since she's been gone about Liv and Dom and everything. I also can't figure out how Dom gets out of the doghouse here. So, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I'm thinking Rhea gets her title back, but they like to kind of throw some swerves at us every once in a while. And I do think that Liv and Dom do have some good chemistry. So we could see a turn here for Dom against Rhea. It would, I mean, not that she's not a babyface here already, but I think that would kind of help cement her in a babyface role as well. Although I would like to see the two of them get together back down the line if that's, if this is the direction they go, because, man, Dom and Rhea had just absolutely insane chemistry together.
Yeah, a lot of it to me is the Judgment Day I felt like they've been on the brink of breaking up like 4 or 5 times. And every time you think it's going to happen, it doesn't. And I think the question really is how are they pulling the trigger? Like, okay, we're finally going to break them up and move people into different situations, or if they're going to continue kind of patching up the boat, so to speak, keep my metaphor going, and going forward with another, even after a 4th or 5th near turn. So I think that's really the question of what they think the future of the Judgment Day is.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's hit one of our emails here tonight. This is an email from Junaid, and this is a comprehensive email. There's a lot to talk about here. So he says, "Hi guys, hope you're both doing well and having a wonderful summer. My first topic is, if Punk continues to be prone to getting injured and then keeps getting injured, is he worth the effort? The sense that I get from the way the storyline is playing out, that WWE may be sure if Punk may make it for SummerSlam, especially in a one-on-one match. And so they've introduced Seth Rollins into the storyline as an insurance policy. Maybe this isn't true and Seth was always going to be part of this, and Punk will say this coming week that he's cleared, but it got me thinking, is Punk even worth the effort to begin with? I've generally liked him in his first run because he was something different. He had great mic skills, was good in the ring, and was that anti-authority rebel. But in his second run, he got injured immediately. He's still doing a good job in promos and being unapologetically abrasive, but I feel like I just feel like one of the biggest events of the year approaches, and you don't know if he's going to be 100% ready. Is he worth potentially mucking up storylines via feeling forced to come up with on-air suspensions because of earlier embarrassing booking decisions, like your babyface ruining somebody's homecoming in front of their sick wife and family, just because one of the participants is injured and has a recent reputation of getting injured in both WWE and AEW? Knowing a match could either be a classic or ruined due to one of the competitors getting injured early on through a seemingly harmless move makes me personally less excited for the match. I personally think he's worth keeping around on the roster, but the uncertainty over whether he'll get injured when you need him the most means that I'd just keep him in a less profile feud for a while so he can prove he can go 6 or so months or longer without getting injured. So the question is, if Punk continues to get injured, is he worth the effort? Chris. if what do you think about CM Punk? Are you enjoying his kind of second lease on life here in WWE, or are or were you like me in the when the news initially broke about Punk coming back, potentially coming back, and then him obviously showing up last year? Was it Survivor? Yeah, Survivor Series, I believe it was. I was not a fan. I was not in the camp for that. I just kind of was under the assumption that he was more trouble than he was worth. But he's won me over the last year. Well, not quite year, last handful of months. Um, with his work, with both in ring and um, sorry, with his work both on the main roster, but also behind the scenes down in NXT. I've heard just kind of nothing but good things about him, and he's certainly flipped my opinion. So curious, what's your opinion of Punk, and is he worth the effort if he continues to get injured?
So I joked earlier about my age. CM Punk's older than me. I'll put that out there. I think he is worth it for a couple of reasons. One, I believe he's one of the biggest shirt sellers that WWE has. So there's that.
Yep.
And two, the things that you just mentioned behind the scenes. I think he definitely has a point to prove after his AEW experience that everything is not that transpired there was not his fault or entirely 100% of his doing. I think he has to be viewed as, this is kind of an odd comparison because no one would mention that, but he kind of has to be used as like a Brock Lesnar, as in he's a special attraction. He has feuds for maybe a month or so, and then he's gone. Maybe he pops in here or there to cut a promo, but I don't think you want to have him as a regular on the shows, every Raw, every SmackDown, whatever. I think you need to use him as a special attraction. We'll get more out of him, and that will help deal with the injury problems that he's had.
No, I don't necessarily disagree. How can I don't know why I was having trouble getting myself back on the screen. There we go. But no, I don't disagree with you there. I think he needs to be used as a special attraction. I don't know if his time as a full-time wrestler is, I mean, we know it's catching up to him. We know it's coming. I mean, his age is he's certainly catching up with him. But it's undeniable the fact that he is a draw for WWE. He's a huge merch seller. I recently went to a Monday Night Raw, and I mean, I couldn't tell you how many Punk shirts I saw. There were Punk shirts on. Actually, there were multiple Punk shirts on sale. So I think he's a moneymaker. I'm almost positive he's a moneymaker for the company. I think it would be a different question if he was causing trouble backstage. Things like we were hearing in AEW. Not that I necessarily want to go down that rabbit hole, but if he was a bit of a nuisance backstage or what have you, I don't know if it would necessarily be worth it, to potentially bring somebody toxic into a locker room like that. But from everything I've heard, he's been nothing but like the utmost professional. Kelly Wells was on a call with Shawn Michaels not that long ago, and I know Shawn was gushing about some of the things that CM Punk had done for NXT. So I definitely think he's worth the effort. Absolutely. All right, Junaid's second question. I generally watch it on a bit of a delay or the next day, and I fast forward through most of the matches to see the finish before reversing and watching the match. But the finish in the Sami Zayn Ilya Dragunov match this week is why. Will WWE feel the long-term impact of finishes like this, or does it not matter? Match finishes are one of the Triple H's booking weaknesses, and sometimes it works to build anticipation for the next match. It's okay not to have a clean finish, but I feel he does this way too much, and it's gotten to the point that it's a crutch. Wade Barrett said something on commentary on the most recent SmackDown after the Andrade Carmelo Hayes match to the effect of, "It's a shame one of them has to lose," which I feel is like something Triple H feels so strongly about that he intentionally does the DQ, no contest, count out sort of finish fairly often to avoid one person potentially looking weak. Um, Question is, will constantly promoting a match for an entire show and not giving a clean finish lead to consequences in the long term? Um, I mean, I don't know. I feel this a little bit. I don't think I have as strong of an opinion as Junaid on this, but I do feel like I mean there have been a few episodes of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT recently, and I can't remember exactly which episodes, but I remember sitting there watching, feeling like, have we even gotten a clean finish tonight? I do feel like they use it as a crutch, maybe a little more often than they should, but they also did that during the Attitude Era, and that was, I mean, one of the most prolific times in pro wrestling. So uh, I don't know. I'm a little torn on it. I like to see clean finishes, or at least a winner and a loser, and maybe not necessarily always a clean finish, because how well, I mean, it's a good way to progress a story. Is having somebody interfere or something along those lines to have a non-clean finish. But I do wish they'd kind of rein back in a little bit on it. How do you feel about it, Chris?
I'm someone who I think has become more a fan of disqualifications at times. I think a lot of it really is a case by case basis. Now, this isn't official, so I heard rumblings that they may be making that in the IC title match a 3-way with Dragunov and Sami Zayn and Braun Breaker. There we go. And if that's the case, then that finish makes sense. I think sometimes, back in the day in the 80s and prior, people just did disqualifications because someone didn't want to lose. But I think the real key is this match supposed to be just a match as an end, or is this match supposed to be a progression of a storyline? And sometimes in wrestling, you have these issues where these two people wrestle and one person wins and then they keep wrestling. And it's like, well, I saw one person or one team win decisively. Why are they having matches against this person over and over again? A DQ, a count out, when done correctly, will give an impetus for people to wrestle again because they didn't get that pinfall victory. So I think the question is very valid in the fact that it can be used too much, but the real question is who's it used for and what happens after, which sometimes that takes weeks to figure out. But really, to me, that's really the decision on whether a DQ finish or a count out, something like that, is good or not.
Yeah, like I don't want to say like you can only have one DQ and one count out finish or something like that per show or whatever, because sometimes it lends to the story. I just sometimes I feel like it happens just a little bit too much. I'm not like I said, I'm not. I think it's still a great way to progress the story and things like that. It almost feels like sometimes the writers don't talk about the finishes and they wind up booking the same thing or something like that. But
I'm actually going to give, this is from a different show, but it's from a TNA show. I actually like the DQ, 2 DQs in a row. So TNA, obviously their main event for Slammiversary was a 6-person elimination match, and they had qualifying matches to get in the tournament. And one match was Santana versus Frankie Kazarian. And the storyline was Moose, JDC's he's not part of the system, which was the main heel faction. And Moose mentioned to him, Moose was the champion. He mentioned that he didn't want Santana to be in that match. So Santana's come back to Impact. He's talked about how he wants to be the champion. So under orders for Moose, JDC came out. He attacked Santana. So Santana ended up getting counted out. And so Frankie Kazarian went forward for the match on the pay-per-view. The next week, JDC wrestles Santana, and Santana, angry over, JDC preventing him from being in the match, ended up hitting him with a chair on the outside and getting disqualified. But it was fine because it's like, in this instance, he doesn't care about beating him because he wants to put pain on him because he kept him out of the title match. So that's just an example of where, they're not having a long feud. It's kind of like a means to an end. One DQ, one count out is because to keep Santana out of the title match, and then a DQ for Santana to get revenge but not pin JDC. And to me, that's an example of that working.
Oh yeah.
Countouts and disqualifications, but just not for any old random match just to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like if in that particular instance where, you know, it's part of a story, absolutely go for it. Go for it 100%. Even if, you know, I don't know if those are on the same show or not, but even if it is on the same show.
There were 2 weeks. So
Okay.
the tournament match was 1 week, and then the next week they've because of what happened, they wrestled each other, and then Santana got disqualified.
All right, cool. No, that makes sense. But no, I think, you know, something like that, absolutely passable. All right, and Junaid's final question here is, so he says, I know that you do your SummerSlam, you'll do your SummerSlam preview next week, or Greg will be doing the SummerSlam preview next week. But I'm giving my own thoughts right now, and I think that Dom inadvertently costs Rhea the match, much in the same way that when Liv won the title from Becky and has been retaining it. Given Rhea has only recently come back, I think it's probably too early for a full-on betrayal from Dom, so I don't think he'll just pick Liv at SummerSlam. Plus, while my preference would be Rhea winning definitively, I don't think that's where they're going. Also, given that Liv accepted the SummerSlam challenge so quickly as a heel, I think it's safe to say she has a plan and will be trying to stir the pot to get Dom to the point that he tries to help Rhea, but costs her because we know that Dom isn't the smartest person in the world. Plus, as head of creative, Triple H clearly likes booking things at a more gradual and steady pace, milking storylines as much as he can. Another 2 to 3 months of suspense in this love triangle could be fun, but it could be tedious. Anyway, here are my pros and cons if they go this route with an inadvertent finish at SummerSlam. Pros: you can get more mileage out of this storyline if you don't have Dom make a definitive choice a couple weeks from now. You may be able to build the suspense of Rhea winning her title back even further by having that idiot Dom be the reason that she doesn't win it, rather than reflecting negatively on her. And 3, Liv may need to be the champion if she's going to lead the new Judgment Day. Cons: Rhea doesn't win the championship in this scenario and would need to be pinned 1, 2, 3 if the match doesn't end in a DQ or count out or no contest. Number 2, by Dom interfering inadvertently, you miss out on a huge SummerSlam moment if Dom and Liv aren't embracing at the end of the match with him being in the middle of this threesome. Considering WWE rarely does the title changes for their bigger titles, of which this is one, this may mean Rhea doesn't win it all back closer to the Royal Rumble, or until closer to the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania timeframe. So the question: does Dom inadvertently or intentionally cost Rhea at SummerSlam? And what are your thoughts on my pros and cons? Keep up the great work. I don't know. Like I said a little while ago, I'm rooting for Rhea to win at SummerSlam. I'm a massive Rhea Ripley fan, so I just want to see her get her title back and kind of see Liv get her comeuppance sooner rather than later. But that's just me. You know, so I guess Chris, on the question, you know, what do you think of where do you think they're going to go with the finish to this match? And you know, anything on the pros and cons that Junaid has pointed out here?
I think that, you know, one, having so many pros and cons just show the examples of all the different things that can come from this storyline. I think it's good that there are a lot of different ways this can go. I think when I hosted the co-hosted the Raw post show where Rhea returned with Wade Keller, I mentioned that there is an opportunity for Dom to side with Liv because Liv is responsible, or he can rationalize that Liv is responsible for something that Rhea never gave him, and that is a victory over his dad. So part of me thinks that they could have that storyline where Dominic believes that Liv helped him beat Ray, and, you know, Rhea never helped him do that, so that's why he should go with Liv. The pros and cons, I mean, there are so many that was mentioned. I think really whatever they decide to do, this is kind of like almost a cop-out answer, but whatever they decide to do, they need to just follow up with it strongly. I mean, in my position, I feel that because Rhea Ripley is basically a babyface. Really further it, you need someone to turn on her. Not that she doesn't have sympathy anyway, but give her an opportunity to chase the title. I think after Dom and Liv, get one up on her, I think it's more for her in the long run. I think establishing her as a clear babyface right now is important, and this is the best, and that would be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be. Rhea is just she's such a charismatic character that it's almost like a Stone Cold Steve Austin thing. She's playing what should be a heel, but it's so entertaining. Everybody loves it. I don't know anybody that's a wrestling fan that's like, no, I don't like Rhea Ripley. I've seen Rhea Ripley cross over into mainstream. I've seen memes posted on social media and things from people that have no idea what wrestling is. And Rhea's in this. It's like I I would love to see her in a prominent babyface role. It's still keeping up the same character, of course, but kind of more allowing the fans to get. Well, not that they're not. I don't want to imply that they're not allowing the fans to get behind her because they totally are. Um, but yeah, I like I said, I just want to see her. I want to see Liv get her come up in sooner rather than later. Maybe it's just a personal thing that I've got about couples cheating on each other, but that's what I want to see. Um, all right, so I guess with that, Chris, is there anything else that you want to bring up on anything that we might have talked about that you haven't that you were like, crap, I forgot about that, and I want to get it off my chest?
No, nothing. I didn't plug my show. Can I do that?
I was gonna do that. That was gonna be the next thing out of my mouth. So do that.
Sure. Thank you all for listening. I'm Chris Maitland. I co-host Wrestling Coast to Coast with my good friend of soon to be 25 years, Justin McClelland. We met at the University of Pittsburgh, and now we are here talking about independent wrestling. We do a different show every week, going around the world sometimes to talk about different shows, what we like, don't like. Me complaining about bad refereeing, which is all throughout wrestling. I love following rules because you can't get into rule breakers if there aren't rules to follow. And our show last week, we discussed Prestige Wrestling's Combat PDX show, which was really good. One of potentially the last appearances for the Motor City Machine Guns on the Independents, depending on if the rumors are true. So yeah, that show comes out every Wednesdays, and we've been doing it for a couple of years. We were originally the Honor Speak show of Ring of Honor, and now we've transitioned to that. And we'll be back out. Our next show will be back out on Wednesday.
Excellent. And I am Nate Lindberg. I am one of the co-hosts of PWT Talks NXT right here on the Daily Cast as well. We usually go live right here on YouTube approximately 10 to 15 minutes after NXT goes off the air. And then the recording, if you want to listen to the audio recording, actually drops on Wednesdays as well. Either very late on Tuesday or early Wednesday on the pwtorch Daily Cast podcast feed. So check both of those shows out if you haven't already. But Chris, thank you very much. It was great to finally get to do something with you. This is the first time we've done some audio together.
Great, I enjoyed it. Hope we'll do it again in the future.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. All right, guys. This has been Wrestling Night in America. Greg Parks will be back next week, and I believe probably doing a SummerSlam preview. I don't know. He didn't clue me in, but I'm sure that's probably what he's doing. I'm going to call it now. All right. Take care, and we'll see you next week.